Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small-town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and my guest today is our very own Parks and Recreation Director, Margaret Glomstad. Margaret knows the value of parks and recreation services in building the quality of life and health, a sense of belonging and community. She has always had a passion for the outdoors and recreation, as evidenced by her earliest jobs as a rec leader and lifeguard. Throughout her 35-year career in parks and recreation, Margaret has refined her vision to help all individuals in the community achieve a healthy, active, and balanced lifestyle by building strong relationships, helping to support families and seniors, and providing safe and fun parks and programming where everyone belongs. Margaret was raised in San Mateo and still lives there with her family. And now my conversation with Margaret Glomstad. Margaret, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you giving up your time from the rec center, community center today to come over here to the library. So we have a lot of ground to cover today, right? We're going to talk about the community center and the parks department. I'm going to break it in half, okay? First part will be about the community center. But before we go there, if you don't mind, I have a little clipping from last week's San Mateo Daily Journal headline that read something like this: Sports field use stirs debate. Contentious Burlingame meeting ends with no action taken on ranking system for organizations. Now, for those of us that weren't at the meeting or didn't read the article, break that down for me a little bit. What does that really mean? I'm not too familiar with how the park system works around here, or the Little League and AYSO and all that. You don't have to get into the weeds, just some highlights, okay?
So the city has quite a few athletic fields, and we also manage the Burlingame School District fields. And so there has to be a process by which people who want to use the fields for athletic sports, organized sports, is allocated. And so that is what the field use policy is. It determines how many hours any organization can spend on the fields and the appropriate fields. And it is quite complex, and it takes a lot of time to sort out. But in a nutshell, the way it's been going is if slots, which is an hour and a half, so each field is divided into a certain number of slots. Each organization gets a slot for an hour and a half based on their number of residents, like their percentage of residents compared to all the other residents in the other organizations.
Okay. With knowing that, and we won't go any deeper than that, all right, does everybody pay by the hour? Is that how that works?
So again, it's not simple. If you are currently with the policy a validated user, there's a low hourly fee for organizations that are primarily resident, like a high percentage of resident. If you are below 50% resident, there's a little bit higher hourly fee. But then there are per player fees. There's a resident per player fee and a non-resident per player fee.
Margaret, okay.
Oh, wait, I'm not even done yet. Well, what about rentals? Rentals have a rental fee.
Okay.
So it's
all right.
Complex.
So to me, it just listening to it and reading a little bit about it, it sounds like a scheduling nightmare. So do you have somebody at the actual community center that sits down and works on this all the time? Or are they over at the Parks Department? Or
No, Raphael is within our rec division, and he is a recreation coordinator, and 90% of his time is spent scheduling fields.
Yeah, boy. Who has the ultimate decision on this? The Park and Rec Commission?
Yes.
So the city council doesn't really get involved in that too much?
Not on this one, no.
Okay. If anybody wants any more information about this, they just call the rec center. And
yes, somebody will be more than happy to attempt to explain it to them.
Boy, that can get deep, huh? All right. So let's just talk about the community. I'm going to break this up, like I said, into two parts. Okay. So let's just talk about the community center for starters. And if I have any dates incorrect, go ahead and correct me. So you took over the role in January 2012?
That is correct.
Yeah, and you worked over there at Highlands Park and Rec Department, correct?
close. Highlands Recreation District.
Okay, is that San Mateo?
So it's unincorporated San Mateo.
Where is that?
That is Bunker Hill and 280.
Oh, up top.
Yeah, so that the San Mateo Highlands is unincorporated area in the county, so they are not serviced by the city of San Mateo. And when they were established, Park District was established for recreation for the community.
How long were you over there at Highland?
A long time, 16 years.
Oh, 16. Wow, okay. Does San Mateo have an actual recreation department or community center like Burlingame does? Where
The city of San Mateo has a couple centers. So they have more than one. They have a specific senior center. They have Bearsford. They have something over at Central Park. So they have different locations, not just one like we do.
Okay. So when you were over there at Highland and this opportunity to come to Burlingame arose, did you know anything about the community, that you were going to get a Taj Mahal community center? Did you know anything about that back in that day?
Before I applied, I did a lot of research about
Yeah.
the city, and I did meet with then city manager Jim Nantel.
Right.
So I know there was interest in building something. The reason I didn't start right away, and I was offered the job in 2011, but I had just completed a building for the district, and I needed to be there a little bit longer to make sure it got opened and it was off and running before I left and came down here.
Right. Okay. Help me with the year that the actual community center started being built, went under construction. Do you remember what the year that was?
2020?
Oh, 2020.
Around 2020.
So how long were you in those temporary offices or Quonset huts?
2 years.
Yeah, that had to be a real struggle, huh?
It was different, but it worked. We were in COVID.
Yeah,
So at the end of the day, it was probably the best time to do it.
right. So all of the files and everything came out of there into the temporary huts, but there must have been excess. So did you have places that you still stored things elsewhere?
We had stuff all over the city.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Okay. And those temporary huts were set up over by the tennis court parking lot, weren't they?
So
by the Lions Club or something?
So we had some classrooms and some staff in portables over by the Lions Club in Lot X.
Yeah.
We had staff over at the courtyard, the Public Works courtyard. I happened to be in the old Sam Subs, the Greyhound Depot.
Was that where you were?
That's where I was. We had containers up at Murray Field that had a lot of like tables and chairs and things in them. So, yeah, we had stuff everywhere.
And what happened during COVID? Did everything shut down for you guys?
No. There was that 2 week,
Right.
kind of like, but then people still are using the parks. So if people are using the parks, somebody has to service the parks.
Right.
We also have childcare. So for families that had to work, and we did summer camps. So we did not do nearly as much program as we did before.
Yeah.
But there were still some core services that we continued.
Okay. So the community center opened in June of 2022?
Yeah, we're coming up on our third year.
Yeah. So it was about 2 years to build it then, I guess, huh? Mm-hmm. Okay, wow. So the day that it opened, how was that day for you? What was that day like?
It was a relief. We finally got there.
Yeah.
As you're going through it, you never know if you're going to make it when you need to get that.
Right.
Or to have it opened. And we made it.
Yeah.
So it was like, and it actually worked.
And a feeling of great accomplishment, huh?
Yeah.
There was a swarm. Kathy and I were away. We were in Southern California with our grandkids, but we heard it was just a swarm of people that day,
cool.
going through all day long.
Now, I'll tell you a little secret. Though.
Yes.
It may have opened, but we really didn't learn how to use everything in that building for about 2 years. So
I
after
bet.
2 years, we were like, all right, I think we got this down now.
I got this, right?
I got this sorted.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's a good story. So I know that there's no typical day, for you, normal day, but can you just walk me through a little bit of a day in the day of a life of Margaret Glomstad, if you don't mind?
They are very varied. So every day is a little bit different, but overall, a lot of time is doing either a staff report or proofreading other documents that other staff are putting out or working on policies. There's a lot of emails and meetings and coordination, trying to pull things together. There's a lot of just being a resource and being there and answering questions. So it varies every day.
Yeah, and you have a great staff.
Oh, yes, we
with
do.
You. It's amazing to me. Yeah. All right. Between the Parks Department and the Community Center, how many full-time, part-time employees do you have, volunteers, et cetera?
So there's 34 full-time staff.
Community Center?
No, there are parks is 23 and 11 is community center.
Okay.
Even though some of the parks people are in the community center too. Part-time staff right now, so I just asked them to pull the numbers. There's 69, one in parks, and then 68 in rec. We usually have 2 or 3 in parks. It just depends on the time of year because they have only so many hours they can work. And then we'll end up with more for the summer because we have summer camps. So we'll have more staff coming in for that.
And that's all paid staff, is that correct?
Yeah, it's all paid.
Yeah. Good jobs for a lot of young kids, isn't it?
Yeah, we do have quite a few young kids that live in Burlingame.
Right, good, okay. How many, out of all the staff that you have between the parks and the community center, the rec center, how many live in Burlingame?
There's only 2 FTEs, which is full-time from parks. There are no full-time rec, but 30 of the part-timers live in Burlingame.
Great, okay. Let's talk about the activity and class booklet that comes out each year to our Burlingame residents, which is an amazing booklet. And I grew up in this town, okay? And I think it was like a newsletter at one time, and it's really expanded and gotten colorful and amazing to me. So, mind talking about that for a second?
No, I'm going to correct you what it's called. It's our triennial magazine.
Triennial magazine, I love it.
Live, Play, Burlingame. Because it's not just classes.
Right, Play Burlingame. So it comes out 3 times a year.
Yes.
So that would be spring, summer, winter, or fall, something like that?
It's like fall, a little bit of winter, but then a spring, summer. So it kind of blends the years.
So because it's such a voluminous booklet, you must have a whole staff that works on that, huh?
So there's one person who puts it all together.
Really?
But everything that's in it, like all the classes, requires a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
The coordinators who oversee all the programming to put all that together.
Who comes up with that, with the great cover? Every time there's always a new cover.
That is one of our supervisors, Claudia Vega.
Yeah, does a great job with that. And then there's always little interesting tidbits inside the booklet itself.
Yep, and we try and get something from every department, especially information that we think is important for the community to know.
Yeah. How much of the booklet do you oversee?
I am basically the proofreader.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. But you see in every page then, right? I mean, you're going through it page by page, right? As of right now, approximately how many classes and activities, can we call them activities? Is that okay?
Call them anything you want.
Okay, classes and activities are offered.
So it varies by season. So I had her pull what's in each one. It's not really accurate because everything comes out so much earlier. So I'll give you an example. For our spring edition, we had 659 programs, which includes drop-in. However, obviously, spring's not our biggest. Summer is very big, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of our summer camps are in our spring edition because people like to sign up for summer early.
Going on ahead of time, right?
And fall is a big number. That was 653.
It's a lot.
But that's because we have all the after-school sports programs and enrichment that are also in there.
Yeah. How has that grown in the, 13 years or 14 years that you've been the director there? I mean, has that doubled? Has it increased by 100, by 50?
I know it's definitely increased a lot. By how much, I don't know.
Yeah. I can just tell by the booklet getting thicker. Okay, so just as a matter of whatever, are there any programs or activities that you're excited about?
You know what we've been trying to do, and I think we have a plan. We only have so many staff, and we have the same number of rec staff as we did before we opened the new building. So we haven't added any head count. So it makes it hard when you're trying to build out programs.
Right.
But we've got a few things behind us, and so we are working on building out our maker space. And so that will be kicking off this summer, and then hopefully with more classes this fall. And then a more robust art program, because we have a lovely space for our art program. And so, but it's finding the right instructors and the right programs to come in.
So when you say you have a lovely space for your art program, what are you referring to?
Our fine arts room is upstairs. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Great views.
I went there. I've been there just about every day for the last week just to get the aura of it, the feel. So how do you decide which programs you want to introduce or delete over time?
I think there's some core programs that we always provide, say fitness. Now, what fitness classes can vary. A lot of it is somebody will come in and say, hey, you guys ever think about taking this class? And we're like, well, that's an interesting idea. Let's look into it. If we can get the instructors, because that's the next thing. Actually all our instructors are contractors. So we run generally just under 100 contractors at any given time.
What do you mean by a contractor? They just sign up to teach the class?
They're the instructors. So the only staff that we use for programming are our internal camps. And that's it. Everything else is a contract class.
Okay.
And so it's finding the contractor, and then you got to find the space of where they're going to be to teach that class. So we're open to almost anything. I'll give you a good example.
Yeah.
John Kervanian, who is from Broadway, he reached out and said, "Hey, I got a guy who is interested in teaching a class about shoe repair." And I was like, "Well, that sounds really cool." So then we hook somebody up with the appropriate coordinator who oversees that type of programming, and if we can get a class out of it, we're 100% in. That kind of fits into our makerspace concept, to get some tidbits on how to repair shoes.
How do you, I think that fellow's down the street from John, too, on Broadway. I think so, yeah. So how do you decide what the cost of that class is going to be?
Generally, the contractor decides. We do a 60-40 split, so the city gets 40%, and then the contractor gets the 60%. Partly, it's like, what will the market hold, right? So the contractor has to be willing with what the market will hold with their percentage.
Right.
And it's a sheer numbers game. If they have enough signups, then it makes it easier to have a lower cost.
And then he also designates, I'm going to do this for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 5 weeks, or something like that? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So how much feedback do you get from the community that you kind of rely on for selecting any kind of class?
In particular, where we spend a lot of time is with the schools for the after-school enrichment. We have a staff person who meets with the PTAs, or the school site council, and works on what they want so it can be catered to each school's individual needs and what their wants are. We do surveys quite often, either by specific programs or by program areas or by special events, to get feedback about what worked or didn't work or where we can improve. Mm-hmm. The more feedback we can get is great. Unfortunately, with a lot of surveys, you only hear when somebody's mad, but that's better than no feedback at all, because trying to get feedback is hard.
Is it? Yeah.
I think sometimes if people are happy, they just don't bother.
Yeah. That's true, isn't it? All right, let's go back to the classes. And we know summer's all booked up and everything. What if I wanted to teach a class in master class chess in the fall? What steps would I take to do that?
You would reach out to someone in the department, and we would hook you up with one of our coordinators. It would depend if it's youth classes or adult classes. And you would sit down and work with them to set up a class.
And what's the chances of getting that class?
It depends whether we already have, we have quite a few chess classes.
Right.
And so it depends on whether we have a need for that type of class.
Yeah.
If we have a location, if the time you want to teach works with what we have available. So there's just a lot of facets that would, the more flexible a contractor is, the easier it is for us.
Yeah, got it. Okay. There's a certain amount of advertising that's in the booklet as well, right? Mm-hmm. Who's responsible for doing all of the ads, going out and soliciting the ads?
Supervisor Claudia Vega.
Really?
And I can't say that we necessarily solicit that more people come to us.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really.
They're usually community local groups.
And it's a lot of repeat, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. So since the opening of the new community center, rec center, how's the use of the parks and the rec center been overall?
It's crazy busy.
It's busy, yeah.
Yeah. Since COVID, the parks are always used, but I feel like they've doubled in use. And you can see it just by the impact on the parks and the amount of work that needs to be done to clean them up or take care of them. The community center is so heartwarming. We went through a long process to design that building and decide what was going to be in it with a lot of community input. And I feel like we're another library. The difference is you can come to the library and be here and have a quiet, relaxing place to be. you can come and do that at the community center, but it's just loud and noisy with a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So we have something in this community for everybody. Peace and quiet, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Besides the library and the community center, you both are the face of Burlingame, I think. Yeah. And Molly Stones is also the face of Burlingame, too. But all right. Word on the street, and I got this from a little buddy that got in my ear a little bit, is that you played a big part in Top Golf. Is that true? Mm-hmm. You know, I had no idea. I thought that was just left in the hands of maybe the city manager, Lisa Goldman, and city council. But somebody said, no, Mark, it's considered a park.
It is a park.
Right. So you played a big part in that.
Yes.
Wow. Tell me about that a little bit.
I guess the easiest way is I was like a project manager. So I worked between the city departments, Top Golf, and then Arco Murray, who was Top Golf's contractor who built it. And so I just facilitated everything. So if they needed something, I'd go figure out who could do that for the city or vice versa. You know, because it is city land that they built on. And it was hard because it was a landfill. So that whole area is a landfill. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of regulation and a lot of hoops you have to jump through to build on landfill.
Were those some of your biggest challenges then?
Yeah, landfill.
Right.
Yes, regulatory agencies.
Yeah. The driving range that was there prior to that, the Burlingame driving range, whatever they called it, there was a great little Hispanic Mexican restaurant there run by two brothers, right? Operated, yeah. What happened to those fellas?
They're still there.
Did they move into Top Golf then?
No, they're still in the building. That building's a city building. That's not part of the Top Golf site.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's a city building.
Really? So it still stands there?
Yeah.
What else is there? Anything?
There's a police substation that is in there, and then we have a bunch of storage.
Oh, great. So they're still doing business and they're going great, I hope.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I get into the Parks Department, which is just coming up here in a moment, what's some of your biggest challenges in running such a comprehensive rec center, community center? What's keeping you up at night with that community center?
Resources. Just having enough resources.
What do you mean by that? People,
space. So there's a lot. The building's open now 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. It opens at 8 a.m. It's open till 9, Monday through Thursday, and then it's open on the weekends, and it can be open late depending on whether there's a rental in the building. That requires a lot of part-time staff.
Right.
And by its nature, part-time staff tend to turn over more often. And we're trying to be consistent and have a level knowledge base. But it's hard to do that with turnover 7 days a week. It would be nice to have more full-time staff that could cover weekends, so then there would be always someone there who knew what was going on. So it doesn't always work that way. There's a lot of things that want to happen in the building. You know, we very early on decided we wanted a place for people to belong and just want to be there, which I think we've been successful. So if for the rooms, to reserve a room, there's a rental fee. Mm-hmm. But if you come and there's no one in a room and there's nothing there and you want to pop in and use it for a meeting, we're going to open the door, you sign in, you go use the room, and there's no fee.
Right.
But when that happens, there's no rooms. There's no space left available for other things. So it's there's only so much space, and you can only do so many things. A lot of times city departments want to use the building for a meeting, but there's no room.
Yeah.
There's too many other things going on.
So that's a whole nother scheduling nightmare, I'll call it.
That's just the building, yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned that it's open 7 days a week, which I knew that. Was it open 6 days for a while? or
the old building was not open on Sundays, and it was open for, 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday.
Right.
But not anymore.
Now it's 7 days a week, almost full bore. I know you close at, 6 o'clock, I think, is it 5 or 6?
5 o'clock on Friday.
Yeah, and what about Saturday? Same on Saturday?
Unless there's a rental.
Yeah, those are pretty good hours, really.
Yeah.
I think so. You have to have people around all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to take a break just for a second, if that's okay with you. All right, Margaret, we're back, and we're going to just go right into the Parks Department. Burlingame, the city of trees.
Yes.
I read there's over 18,000 trees in Burlingame. And we'll get to some of that
Those
later.
are city trees.
Okay. Oh, city trees. So
not public trees.
Not public trees.
Or private
trees that we would have on our own. Wow. Amazing. Okay. Just for a little memory refresher, because I forget things easily, how many employees at the park department?
There are 23 full-time staff members.
Yeah, and those guys are the guys that are keeping our parks clean.
And
gals, thank you. Yeah, and we're going to talk about, I think her name is
Carly
in a minute. Yeah, she's terrific. So those guys are the crew, the people, are essentially taking care of the parks, doing the trimming of the trees, keeping them clean, taking care of the restrooms, et cetera, right?
And more, but yes.
What's the more part?
All right. So the Parks Division has a tree crew, and they take care of all the city trees.
Right.
We also use a contractor because there's obviously too many, but they tend to do most of the service calls to residents, so they have a touch with the city instead of just a contractor. The staff also take care of all the medians that are maintained by the city, the roundabouts, because we have a couple in the city, any islands, all the city buildings like City Hall, the library. They take care of that maintenance. Anything landscape that's city-owned, parking lot landscaping, is all within the Parks Division. They also, besides mowing lawns and cleaning bathrooms and picnic areas and picking up trash, they also maintain the ball fields, like the backstops, the grandstands, anything that needs to be taken care of, minus the Washington Park grandstands, but all the other ones.
That is a lot going on. I don't think people know that.
No, they don't.
They just see a guy watering the lawn or cutting the lawn or whatever.
Yep.
It's amazing to me. So Rich Voltz is your park supervisor,
No, he's a park superintendent and city arborist.
Yeah. What does that mean? He takes care of the trees? What is that arborist?
City arborist, well, he is an arborist, but yes, he oversees the city's tree program.
Yeah. So you must lean on him quite a bit then.
Obviously. Yeah. I'm not an arborist.
But I mean, you lean on him to do the scheduling and all of that and talk about, take care of business.
Yeah, and he has a team of 2 supervisors. One, Pedro, oversees the landscape crews and the maintenance crew, and then Carly oversees the tree crew and tree-related items.
Right. How many parks do we have in Burlingame?
Well, that's a really weird, interesting question. I'm going to say the number 25.
Yeah.
However, what's a park?
Right. And that brings that up, because I was going to ask you, and then we have the new town square that's coming on board here soon, and there's going to be like a grassy area next to it. So is that
no grass?
No grass. I thought we were having grass.
No grass in the town square.
So there won't be a park then. It's
still going to be a park, and it will still be maintained, but it's not. Does a park have to have grass?
That's good. I don't know. I'll Google that later.
It depends on how you want to look at it. Does a
Right.
park have to have a playground? Not all of the parks have playgrounds. So I think it depends. But there are 26
With the town square?
that we would call a park, or it has a name assigned to it.
That would be the town square area then?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the park that's around the block from me where I live, Victoria Park. I kind of grew up there and all that good stuff. And it's up for some major renovation, I think.
I think it's minor renovation.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. But so you're putting in a new surface, right?
We're going to resurface the blacktop area.
Yeah. And really, you're going to call this minor? I thought it was pretty big time, actually.
What would have been a big time was when we did the playground there.
Oh, and that was just, last year or the year before? Last couple of years, right?
2 or 3 years ago.
You did a great job there, by the way.
Yeah, came out nice.
My grandsons love it. So when it's time for a minor or major renovation, who decides that? How does that come about?
So I think it depends what it is. So we have a
Let's use Victoria Park as an example.
Yep.
Okay?
So if it is something like a playground, we do a very public process to decide what it's going to be. I don't live in Burlingame. Most of the staff don't live in Burlingame, right? So what I want might sound cool, but is it what the community wants for their parks? So for a playground, and we don't, usually everything's needs-based. We don't have enough money to do it just because we want to. It's when something has to be done. And so that playground was one of the oldest in the city. It was pushing 26 years old before we switched it out. And playgrounds come out of compliance. They're not compliant with ADA and a whole bunch of other stuff. So we get a landscape architect on, and then we put out a survey to the community, targeting specifically those closest to the playground, but to anybody who could use it because it is a city asset. And then we ask for volunteers from people who live by the park to be on a committee. And so there'll be a committee of 2 to 4 residents and city staff, as well as landscape architect. We get the survey. We see what people want. Do they want the same stuff that's there? They want something new. And this committee uses a survey and works with the landscape architect and a playground designer to design a couple options of a playground. That goes to the commission. We invite everybody who's in the community who wants to come and give input to the meeting. And then a playground is decided upon, and that is what gets built. So there's always themes, like the one at Victoria is like a solar system, space kind of theme. We have Laguna Park that just got done. We're going to have a ribbon cutting in May.
Terrific.
And it's going to be a Laguna, lake, water. It's going to be a beach theme.
Oh,
so it's
good.
very cute. The one by the train tracks, we just did not too long ago, and that's a train theme. Mm-hmm. But those are all designed by the community as a whole. The blacktop, because it's getting uneven, we need to do it before it becomes unsafe for people to use. We did many years ago something called a Parks Master Plan. And in it, we did a lot of surveying. It took a couple years to do, and we got input from the community about all the different parks and what would you like to see in a park. Restrooms were something that came up. Off-leash areas were something that came up. This was before the craziness of pickleball, but that would definitely come up if it came up, if we did that process now. And so when we go to do something, we look at the Parks Master Plan and look and say, what were they looking for, at least within this component, say a blacktop? And what is the interest and what do we keep hearing? Pickleball, something we hear about. So with this one, because we'd be making a change than what it exactly is now, we bring it to commission so the members of the public can come and give input on what's going to happen to that park.
Okay, so speaking of them, we'll stay with Victoria for a minute. I saw that it was proposed to have some pickleball courts lined, maybe a second basketball hoop, because it has one right now. Years ago it had 2, but then it went to 1. Now it's thinking of going back to 2. Also Foursquare and hopscotch, right. Where are we in that? Is that happened yet, or is that still going through the process?
Went to commission. No, went to commission. They approved pickleball lines and hopscotch and full court basketball.
Yeah. So what about those neighbors? I thought there was a little bit of a commotion with the 2 hoops years ago. Maybe you weren't here when that happened. They took the hoop down, but now they're going to go back to 2. So you're not expecting any kind of pushback from the community?
Well, we already had the meeting.
Yeah.
We did have someone come and speak. They were more concerned about pickleball and the sound of pickleball than full court, but he was not keen on full court either.
Yeah.
But there are quite a few families that spoke in favor of full court for their kids.
Absolutely.
Because there are very few in the city.
Right.
We weren't as worried about pickleball and the impacts. We have 2 other parks that have pickleball lines also, and they're right by residents, and there's not a lot of noise. There'll be some use, but you have to bring your own net. They're not nets in the ground.
Correct.
So,
These will be portable nets.
Right, portable nets. So we are going to go back to commission to make sure that the court doesn't get taken over by pickleball, and that way youth who want to play basketball don't have a space to do it. So that's something that will go back to commission before the work's done. But the work on the park won't be done until probably August, September.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask next, the timeline. So let's say, when did all this start with Victoria Park? Like many months ago, give or take?
Our park superintendent brought it to us saying, we're going to need to do something about it, probably back in December, January.
Right.
But then we needed to work with a consultant to just come up with what could fit on the court so we'd have something to show commission. And then it's just a matter of staff time and bandwidth to put it all together, to notice the community, to put the signage out, and then bring it to commission.
Yeah.
So we finally just did that in April.
And you thinking work might start in August or in the fall or
It'll
something?
be in fall. During the summer is a hard time to get a lot of work done because of
vacations?
Well, no, contractors are working on school sites because school's out. So until
right.
school goes back, it is harder for us to get work done.
Yeah. So the process could take a complete year, give or take, huh?
Yeah, easily.
Yeah. Okay. And is each park have money budgeted for? Or are you just taking it out of the general budget to do that? Or how, beginning of the year, you decide we're going to do 4 parks, 10 parks, 2 parks?
So as part of the city budget process, we kind of have a line up what parks are in need and, the priorities. And we go to council every year for the capital improvement program and request funds for specific projects. And if there's funds available, then they're, given to the department, then we'll move forward with those projects.
Okay, great. I don't play pickleball. My brother's a big pickleball fanatic, and it's just nice to hear that there might be some pickleball, a court or two. Is it going to be 1 court line for 1? 2. That's very good. Great. All right. You're the czar, of this amazing community center and parks department. I'm just wondering, do you have a favorite park or a little hidden gem in Burlingame that you like to visit?
No, actually, I don't.
Okay.
I think for me, it depends on what you're looking for at any given time.
Uh-huh.
If I want peace and quiet, I'd go to Mills Canyon or Heritage Park.
Heritage is the one that's across El Camino. It's
It is
on Ralston?
It's at that little corner where all those roads just kind of come
right.
together.
There's a little creek that runs through
it
there.
It sure does have a little creek. So
yeah.
When the water's running, you get the creek sound.
Yeah.
And if you want like a lot of activity, you'd go to, say, Washington Park.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You want some wind and some beautiful views, you go to the Bayfront.
Okay, I thought you were going to say Cuernavaca.
No, there are some good views up there, too.
Yeah, does that get a lot of use up there? I haven't been up there in years.
I think it does for different things,
right?
It's not a big, we just redid the ball field with synthetic turf. And so that just opened up. Unfortunately, we had some youth who decided to set off some fireworks there, and it melted the turf.
Yeah,
which was very unfortunate,
man.
And it cost the city about $25,000.
I was going to say that's a lot of money,
but it's fixed, so it's all open again.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, Ray Park's another really good park.
Yep, that can be a very busy park too.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right up next to what's the school? Lincoln next to it?
That's Lincoln.
Yeah.
And they actually use the field and the basketball court as part of their play area.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Margaret, I bet you didn't know that I'm a member of the Burlingame Historical Society. Okay,
I would never have guessed. Never have guessed.
But recently, my wife and I were over at the historical archives, which are right in front of the Rose Garden. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I forget why my wife was over there with me, but anyway, we were there, and she loves to kind of get her hands in the earth. Mm-hmm. She likes to dig and plant and water and all that good stuff. She was just wondering, does the Parks Department take volunteers to do any planting or anything, weeding or anything like that?
Yeah.
Really?
If she'd like to volunteer, she can come on over and take care of the rose garden for me.
But would she just come to the front desk and see Maggie and then say, Maggie, I want to go work at the rose garden? I mean, how does that work? What's the process?
So she could come in and mention it to Maggie, and then we would get her set up with our volunteer coordinator. There is a little application that you fill out, and then if it's, say, the rose garden, you have to have a lot of autonomy, so there won't be staff there telling you what to do. So it generally is if you come with a skill set, like, say, pruning roses.
Right.
Then, we'd have you, and you'd come in on your schedule, and you'd go and work
That's great
in the
to
rose
know.
garden. Or we do have our youth advisory committee tends to do a public service. I think it's Temple Shalom.
Yep.
They come and they do a Mills Canyon cleanup every year, which we love.
Nice.
So there are groups that do that, and we do have some individuals who trim roses for us. But if you want to pick weeds, boy, we'll take anybody who wants to pick weeds.
You're first on the list?
You just can walk through the park and pick them as you go.
Okay. Oh, boy. Okay, so I'm going to go back to talk about Carly Burrow.
Burrow? Mm-hmm.
Great. Carly Burrow for a minute. She's the park supervisor. Yeah. Is that how okay. So I'm going to tell you this little story. She came by our home one evening, knocked on the door, the dogs are barking. I didn't want to answer the door, but I had to shut the dogs up, right? So I answer the door, and she goes, "Hello, sir. I'm from the Parks Department." She gives me her card, and would you like those 2 dying trees on your sidewalk to be removed and replanted with something else? Sure, that's a great idea. How much is it going to cost? Nothing, right? Mm-hmm. I go, wow, sure, let's do that. She goes, I'm going to give you X amount of trees to select from. There was quite a few different trees we could have replaced with, right? And so I just said to her, I said, "Hey, Carly, by any chance, what about the ginkgo tree here that's been here forever in front of our home here in Bayswater?" And she said, "Yes, we could." She goes, "Yeah, it's time for that to go. We will be happy to take it down for you, but you have to replace it with a ginkgo." I go, "Okay. A full-blown one? No, that'll cost you money to put a full-blown one in, but if you get a baby one, right, it's no charge. But you have to do a ginkgo tree because Bayswater is a tree-themed street." Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do we have quite a few of those in Burlingame, the tree-themed streets?
Yeah, we do have some, yes.
Yeah. Then she said, "But I have to warn you, we might plant a male, but it could turn to female, or a female could turn to a male." I thought, wow, I didn't even know that. But
yes,
the thing that blew me away, and this was probably in February when she came by, she said, "We'll have it done in April." It was done in April, just like 2 weeks ago or something.
That's impressive.
Yeah, to me, it was very impressive.
We try hard.
Well, that's a little shout out to her, okay? Because she came through, she did what she said she was going to do, and it happened. And sometimes I don't criticize the city. This is where I live. I love Burlingame, but you know how things go sometimes. They fall through the cracks, right?
Yeah, well, what's interesting, and a lot of people don't realize, is the trees in front of your home, even if they're in your front area, but anything, I think it's like 10 feet from face of curb is a city tree.
Right.
So it's a city asset. It's owned by the city. It's maintained by the city. So when she came by your house, those 2 trees that were dying, those were city trees.
Yeah.
And we have lists. So if you're not on a theme block, there's a list of trees that are appropriately sized for whether you're in a planter strip or you don't have a planter strip or you're under wires. So you have a selection that we will plant and maintain for you. We hope that you will water the tree once it's planted to get it going, but once it's going, it won't need as much water after the first couple of years.
Right.
But if you're on a theme block, then the theme tree goes back in. And it's a discussion that's been before the Beautification Commission, and actually they're going to go back and talk about it again next Thursday at their meeting.
Yeah, great. Mm-hmm. Well, we're very pleased, and by the time that ginkgo tree grows full-blown, I will be long gone.
Yeah, they're a slow grower.
Yeah. And I don't mean moving from Burlingame, okay, when I say long gone. Does Burlingame have an official tree?
Not as far as I know.
Okay. I was just going to use that in a trivia night, but I'll forget that. So, all right. We have time for a few more questions, and I got these from my mailbag, meaning that people knew that I was going to be with you today. So they said, "Mark, ask Margaret this, ask Margaret that." So you ready for this?
Go.
Okay. What is the overall budget for Parks and Rec?
About $15.4 million.
Okay.
That is annual operating.
Yeah.
Not CIP.
What does that mean?
Capital improvements a separate pot. This is the money every year, generally.
Right. Did you get to run payroll, keep everything working correctly? Is that what it is? Yeah. But if you need a capital improvement, now give me an example of a capital improvement. Would that be a park?
Victoria Playground.
Yeah, is a capital improvement.
Is a capital improvement.
All right. Here's the next question then. Does Burlingame receive any state or federal funds, or is the budget strictly from the city property and sales taxes?
So general fund, and when I say general fund, it would be property tax, sales tax, hotel tax are generally the funds that we get. We do sometimes get grant money. So the Mobility Hub, which is in front of the train station, did have grant funds to help build that. Primrose Park, that was state grant money that helped renovate that park. But generally, we're general fund supported.
Which means you're on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This one came up too. I know that Burlingame doesn't really have anything to do with the ECR, the eucalyptus trees coming down, right? Caltrans handles that. Any idea when that project might begin?
I think they're starting pretty soon, but they're not going to start in Burlingame, from my understanding.
Starting in San Mateo?
It's either Millbrae or San Mateo.
Right, one end to the other.
I think there's still some stuff they have to sort out along El Camino before they can start in Burlingame.
That project is going to be amazing.
It will be when it's done and in 50 years from now.
What I mean,
it's going to take a while.
What do you think, about 5 years, give or take? I'm just looking at the trees.
I
to
mean,
begin
the road
with.
will be great, but
Right.
the trees themselves will take a while to be substantial again.
Okay, do Burlingame residents receive any priority in classes and or registration for parks and recreation programs?
Yes. So when we open registration for each season, it's for residents only. We usually open it on a Tuesday, I think, or a Wednesday. And then the Monday after, so 5 days after, is when non-residents can register.
Right, and obviously there's a little bit of a reduced fee if you're living here in Burlingame.
Oh, yeah, you pay 20% more if you're a non-resident.
Yeah. On top of that, does a senior get a break on top of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
20%.
Great. Okay. Okay. How realistic is it for Parks and Rec to enforce behavior regulations for people and animals at the park? And he gives me an example. For example, dogs often run off the leash at the park, and trash can be a problem. What's the story there? What's the story with the dogs off the leash, on the leash, and the trash and all that?
Realistically, it's an honor-based system. I mean, we aren't everywhere all the time.
Is there certain parks that are designated off the leash, though, or at certain times? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But with many things, people do whatever people want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And most times it's probably not very impactful, but every once in a while it is.
Yeah.
So there are designated off-leash areas and designated times, and they are posted, and they are also on the website. And there are quite a few options, but that doesn't mean people are going to follow the rules.
Right.
We have something called field monitors. We used to only have one, and it started managing the fields when they were being sublet. Mm-hmm. We have 6 now. They really bolstered after COVID because we are having so many problems in the parks. But again, they're not everywhere all the time. We really rely on community members to help us.
Yeah.
We have some past commissioners who will reach out and say, hey, this is going on in the park. We were walking our dogs early in the morning, and the irrigation got a leak. And will tell us, or you have this problem over here. We need that help. We have a group who helps with this Mills Canyon because they walk it often.
Right.
And so we encourage people to reach out to us and tell us what's going on. And if they can give us a day of the week and a specific time, it's easier for us to target it with a staff person to go check up on it.
Yeah.
But
Great.
we need all the help we can get.
Oh, what'd you say, 26 parks? It's amazing, isn't it? It's a lot going on, that's for sure. All right, before we close this out, when you're not running the Parks and Community Center, what do you do? How do you take a little downtime?
Well, I like to sleep. I know I'm tired a lot. I like spending time in my yard.
Yeah.
I love to garden. I have a dog and a cat and a husband and kids. And so spending time with them outside is where I'd like to be, or reading a book, laying in bed.
Yeah, great. One fun fact. Again, this little birdie got in my ear, and he said, your husband is kind of an extreme sport guy. Like when everybody's coming back from Tahoe because it's hailing and windy and all of that kind of stuff, he's heading for Tahoe to ski. Is that true? Is there any truth to that?
There's a little bit of truth to that. He loves his sports, and he doesn't do anything halfway.
Yes, great. Okay, and you have 3 children?
I have 2.
Do you have 2? Boy and a girl? 2 boys?
A boy and a girl.
Wonderful. How old are they?
William will be 31 coming up in June, and my daughter is 28.
Wow, terrific. Good for you. How about a few shout-outs to family, colleagues, and friends before we wrap this up?
Well, I have to shout out, because this is a work thing anyway, is to my work family, because honestly, I couldn't do anything without all of them. I'm kind of behind the scenes trying to facilitate things, but they're the ones who make things happen.
And they do make things happen.
And they make things happen, and they make the city a greater place because of the work they do.
Yeah.
And sometimes they get, they feel like everybody's out to get them, because it's easy to feel that way. There's a lot of anger and suspicion these days.
Yeah. Well, they're in the face. They're in the face of the public.
But they work very hard, and they take a lot of pride in what they do.
Yeah.
So the community should be very proud of the staff that work for the city, because they are getting their money's worth.
Yeah. Great job. Okay. Did I forget anything? Are we good?
We're always good.
Okay. Margaret, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. I'd like to thank Margaret Glomstad for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Before I close out and roll my credits, just a reminder of how lucky we are in Burlingame to have such an amazing park and recreation department and a state-of-the-art community center. Burlingame has 26 parks, 18,000 trees, 650 activities and classes to offer, led by Margaret Glomstad, Director of Park and Recreation, and Rich Voltz, Park Superintendent, and their respective staffs. So when you see these hardworking folks maintaining the community center or the parks, make sure to give them a tip of the hat and a thank you. Many of them don't live in Burlingame, but they are trying their hardest to keep our city and its parks beautiful. Thanks to my Minister of Podcasts, Mike Nagler, Creative Ideas and Editing, Shelby Lucchese, Director of Marketing, Adrian Kwok Lucchese, video by the great Ray Tyler, and original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at bray.com. This podcast was written, produced, and directed by Mark at the Mic and was recorded on Thursday, April 24th, 2025 at the Burlingame Public Library. Before I close out, be sure to look for my next episode of A Burlingame It's a Small Town podcast, as my guest will be local resident Don Donahue, web designer, sculptor, and designer of the mosaic mural Greetings from Burlingame, located on Hatch Lane, just off Burlingame Avenue. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.